You're tuned in to Steve Megatron on Altered Geek.
Hello and welcome to Altered Geek. I'm your host, Steve Megatron Phillips, and in this episode of the podcast, I'll be talking about, well, I felt it was fitting to talk about a little bit of nostalgia of things that I remember as a kid that really impacted me, or things that I remember. Now, granted, there's things I don't remember still, but I still thought it was kind of fun to bring up some of the nostalgic things that I did enjoy, and one of them is games. And unfortunately, there's this point where you want to go back and play them for nostalgia's sake, just because you're like, you know, I've played the games I care about that are out now. What is there to go back and play that I enjoyed as a kid? And I don't own a game system. I don't have any ambition to buy another game system. For one, they cost too much, and then the amount of money you have to pump into these things just for them to get replaced within 3 to 5 years, as opposed to something like the SNES where, you know, theoretically you could get that and still be playing a lot of the stuff on it. It's kind of tricky because I used to be one of those guys that got a bunch of emulators, and I realized that they're not technically legal unless you physically own the original cartridge or the game itself, because it's technically like a backup. So if you own it, they're technically okay, but it's still a moral gray area. But I used to do a lot of that, and I don't so much anymore, more so just because I don't really want to have to go through the hassle of it. I just want to be able to play the game, and that's kind of it. I dug up the 1999 Star Wars Pod Racer game the other day. I still had the disc. I was rifling through my desk a couple months ago, and I found it, and I was like, holy crap, I really miss playing this game, because you can customize your pod, you can go fast. I had my Xbox 360 controller in, which was much better than the joystick and the gamepad I had way back in the day when it came out. And it actually controls a lot better with the Xbox 360 controller plugged into my computer. But no, I really enjoyed it. I had to go to, I think it was a website like Game Copy World, which used to, back in the day, used to have a bunch of, like, you could get the patches for games, you could get it so you could replace certain files, so you didn't need the CD. So you could essentially dump your whole CD to your computer and play it and not need to pop the disc in every time you needed to play, because a lot of the time it would buffer or lag, as they would say in modern terms for online gaming. And I wasn't one of those people that liked to have the CD in it. It just slowed things down. So I often did that. But no, I had to go there and get a patch for it so I could play without the CD. And I think I ended up having to turn it into an ISO file on my computer so that I could run it from the computer, because there were some complications. And the nice part about the old games like that, like the old Pod Racer, you don't have to install them. Which is kind of strange when you think about modern Windows. You don't have to install them because they can't connect to anything. So they just ultimately play. And so I was able to do that, and I played a few rounds of it. I really enjoyed it. There was a couple cheat codes which obviously don't work to some capacity. I have to figure out how to get them to work. It's basically you just make the money kind of pop out. You know, you can put like 4,000 credits per hit, and then you have to like exit out after you've saved and then do it again. It was a trick that we used to do so we could get unlimited money and just upgrade our pods as much as we wanted. But it was a lot of fun, and I remember playing that a lot. Another game that up until about a year ago I played a lot still, even after it came out, was Command & Conquer Red Alert 2, and Yuri's Revenge. Some of my favorite strategy games are the Command & Conquer series. I used to play StarCraft as well, but past the first game of StarCraft, I never really got back into it. I tried to play StarCraft 2 when it came out, and it just didn't hold the attention for me. But I've also played that years after it came out as well. And But for me, like the Command and Conquer games, like I don't need the cheat codes. I've just gotten really good at the game. Red Alert and Red Alert 2 are by far my favorite Command and Conquer games. Another one I found that I still had the CD to, and I had to try and figure out how to get it to work, was Fury 3. There was a couple of things I had to do to it to get it to work in Windows 10, which I wish that the game would get an update because it was such an awesome game. I mean, there really wasn't a lot to it, but it was a lot of fun to fly around in the ship and then all the different things you got while you were in it. It was just a really fun flight and battle simulation game, and I found a lot of enjoyment out of that game over the years. My brother and I used to play the crap out of it. But no, I mean, I've played a lot of stuff like that. I'm still playing Star Trek Online as well. It's one of those things that I didn't play it when it first came out, but I started playing it about a year and a half ago at this point, and like really solidly playing it. And I still play it up to this day. I don't really play Battlefield 4 all that much. I've played that a little bit more now. I haven't played Battlefield 1 in probably 8 months, maybe 6 months, somewhere in there anyway. It's kind of old hat to me at this point. I'll go back to it eventually. I kind of do that with a lot of games. I just recently beat Mass Effect 2. But no, I was going back through some games, and I wanted to play, like, I don't know if anybody remembers this. It's a DOS game. Monuments of Mars. And I really enjoy a lot of the old DOS-based games. Some of them being like Commander Keen 4, like Secret of the Oracle. Then you've got like Descent, Desert Strike. I used to play Doom 2, Duke Nukem 3D. Monuments of Mars was just, it was a fun game. It was a side-scroller, kind of in the vein of like a Mario. But it was like a one hit, you're dead, and then you start over the whole level. So like if you've used up all your ammo, you could essentially kill yourself in the game, and then you would come back and you'd add everything. So, or you could save too, which was kind of revolutionary in a sense for those old games. And it was only like 200 and some kilobytes to play the game. There's not a lot to it. But I remember beating it once. And I played it all day. Because I didn't know I could save at the time. I figured that out later on. But no, and it's a lot of figuring things out. There's a site where you can actually go. I think it's like classicreload.com. You can play a lot of the old Doom games, or not Doom games, DOS-based games. And even some that aren't DOS-based, you could play them on that website. And it basically emulates it in like a Flash player type setup somehow. Which is a lot of fun to go back and be able to play these and not have to install them. Because they're kind of freeware at this point, where the rights are still owned by the original company, but they just don't really care that people are playing them on there. There was like Adventure Math, where it's like a Mario Brothers meets math type of stuff. I used to play that a lot with my brother. And then Crayola Studio, Math Blaster. Some of the educational games, I used to play those in my elementary school, which kind of dates me. But like the Putt-Putt games, The Backyard, Oregon Trail, Treasure Math Storm, Mahjong, Jazz Jackrabbit. That was one I played a lot of, and then Jazz Jackrabbit 2. Very weird game, but it was fun nonetheless. Tried playing Heretic, didn't really get much into that. Played the Ultimate Doom, Final Doom. EGA Trek, which is basically like a Star Trek pre-simulator type thing. I also have the 25th anniversary Star Trek CD-ROM game, which was for DOS, Windows 95, kind of in that realm. Can't play it now, but I still have it. I still have the Beast Wars CD that came out in the mid-90s. CD-ROM game. And I used to have an ISO of it on Predacon Empire, when I had that website, when I had the early Transformers website, which I could probably dig some of that up again. I have it on a external hard drive at this point. I also own the CD though, and I had the patch for it, so you didn't need the CD, and it would also upgrade part of the game. Game was stupid difficult in some areas just because it really didn't give you any explanation of what you're supposed to do. There's no explanation of what you're supposed to do in certain things and in certain scenarios. And so oftentimes you get stuck in the levels and not know why. They were very blocky, pixelated, which is hilarious because you look at the show and they're so smooth and everything else. And then you go in the game looks like crap. They're super blocky. It's like if you took the Beast Wars characters and put them in the Combiner Wars and then kind of gave them those jagged edges and kind of, more of the Transformers look than a Beast Wars look. It's kind of that. And then the voice acting was terrible in it. Some of the aspects, they sounded like the actual actors, but it sounds like it was just poorly imported or they got people that could vaguely do the voice. It was terrible. But I want to go back and play the game. And unfortunately, because Windows 10 doesn't give you the ability to play any of those, I tried to set it up. I tried to play it. I am trying to tweak the game to where, and I think it's because it's so old. It's older than Pod Racer. Pod Racer, there was a workaround. This, I'm having more of a difficult time. Plus, I remember you could play back in the day on MSN Gaming Zone. And yeah, those days where you'd log into MSN and play games networked with, over the internet with people, and you could only do like 4 players. But I used to do that, and that was over dial-up, and it was terrible. So I would take up my dad's phone line like pretty much all day and night, and I would play Beast Wars online against other people, and it was basically like a death match. Like, you stand in 4 corners, and then you just attack each other till you're the last bot standing. And you could transform and everything else, but I was insanely good at the multiplayer of it. I very rarely got beat, which is why it would be entertaining to go back and try and play the game now. I know that it can't connect to the internet, but it's still something I want to try and go back through, play the game, beat it, because I never got past the first level, or first couple levels in the original the map. And when you lose a character, you're supposed to be able to go in flight mode as like Air Razor or Terrorsaur and go recapture them and save them. And I could never do that either, because I never got to that point. So I think maybe once I did, because I vaguely remember seeing it, but I don't remember how to play it. So, but anyways, that's something else I'd like to go back. No, but like gaming is one of those things where it's fun to go back and play old games. Whether it's from the PC or not, I still enjoy the occasional Mario Brothers and Sonic the Hedgehog, like Pac-Man, depending on how I feel. The old Disney Aladdin game from Super Nintendo. Super Smash Brothers, always a favorite of mine in gaming. And I don't know, there's just so many games. Mega Man X. Yeah, Mega Man X was another one that I was really good at. Played all the way through X4, and then I bought X6 or X8 and beat that on the PS2. Galaga, yeah. Like I said, there's just so many games that I used to play. A lot of Dragon Ball Z games, a lot of Ninja Turtle games, crap load of Pokemon games. So, anyways, just kind of running about. Gaming is one of those things where I'm really enthusiastic to go through and go back and play. And I know that other people do that as well, whether it's, teaching their kids about the old games or just going back for nostalgia's purposes. It's just the hard part is going back and finding ways that you could play them. I remember even back when DOS in 95 was something where they had, I don't know if you remember those 101 Best Games CDs that used to come out. And they would have all these massive amount of DOS games. And you would run it either from Windows or a DOS prompt. These are back the DOS 95, Windows 95 days. And you could select any of these games, and a lot of the time, a lot of them were just terrible. Like they just were games that sucked. But occasionally, you would find a couple gems in the CD, and I had a couple of those sampler discs that you could buy anywhere. You could get them, they'd have them at computer shows, which are kind of obsolete, non-existent at this point because of online shopping. And computer shows were awesome. I don't know. That's another thing. Even like going to computer shows. I don't know if anybody used to do that too, but it was kind of like a computer convention in a sort. And I used to go. They used to have 2 of them a month. They had one in one location, like our sports arena, in downtown Flint, and they had another one in the Holiday Inn Gateway Center in Grand Blanc, and I used to go to that one too with my dad. And we used to go every time there was a computer show, and they'd have raffles on going in occasionally. Like I think we won something once, but we used to go in. The Gateway Center one was significantly smaller. The one at the sports arena, they just had you walk around the outer part because you had the chairs and everything else, and they would be setting up for some event down at the bottom, but at the top they would have all the computer stuff. It would be like a Saturday Sunday thing all day, and we would go every Saturday to these things, and they would have these big racks of 3.5 inch or 3.25 inch floppy disks, the 1.44 megabyte disks, where you could sit there and just check them out, and you would have demos of anything. Like there was Star Wars or Star Trek Doom, which was pretty awesome. You could it looked like the Enterprise D. Somebody like remapped the WAD files, and you could install this or drag it into your Doom game folder, and it would overlay everything to look Star Trek-y, and the sound effects, the transporting elements, the weaponry. It was a lot of fun to go through, and I think it gave it like a Captain Kirk face, even though it looked like TNG and a lot of it. But no, I mean, I that was one of the things I bought. I mean, there was a Star Trek trivia game, like a old version of like an Alcars. I bought the Star Trek Omnipedia database there one time, and it was kind of interesting to get that. And you could haggle. That was a nice thing too. Is if you didn't have enough money for something, you could kind of haggle with them, and they would kind of do it because they were at the show, and you could get a discount. And oftentimes I was like $1 or $2 short on some like floppy that my dad was like it's too overpriced anyway on some of the stuff, and that's way back then. And I would occasionally do that, get something, and he would go through, look at all the computer parts, because you could go there and have a computer built for you while you're sitting there. And he oftentimes would do something like that, maybe once or twice a year. Would go through and just buy parts to upgrade ours at home, and it was very educational and fun at the same time. And you get to see all the technology as it was coming out, because some retailers would have different like that was one of the first time I'd seen a flat panel monitor or a DVD player, like before I even owned some of this stuff. And CD-ROMs, because we barely had one of those. And they even had places where they had I bought up my first controller there. It was like a $5 or $10 controller that looked like a Sega Genesis controller, and then I bought another one that was like an SNES controller, plugged into the old game ports into the back of the PC before they USB existed, which it sucked, because if those things like popped out, you had to reprogram your device. It wasn't a lot of fun to troubleshoot that stuff compared to now, where you just plug it in and it works. That's the beautiful thing of plug and play compared to back then. Everything just kind of works. It was a struggle. The struggle was real. So yeah, that was a lot of the stuff that I used to see as a kid. Aside from all the television aspects that kind of talked about in the last episode of things coming back, and there were shows I missed when I talked about it. But regardless, it's not it's not that much different. Even with games, it's harder to screw up a game than it is a TV show, because a game you can only really improve as far as aesthetically and story. But you could also have, things that turn into a dumpster fire the entire time, and that's a problem with gaming as well. But majority of the old 90s stuff, I found a lot of enjoyment in it. It used to take up a lot of my time. I used to sit there and play a lot of that stuff. Didn't really have... Well, I guess something that was kind of neat about back then with gaming even is you had demos of games, which I kind of wish we still had today. And they used to have websites that had that kind of stuff now, but they don't even put out games like that anymore. You can do like a trial of the game if you download it from somewhere. So, I mean, in a sense, it's kind of the same. It's just that they're handling it themselves instead of outsourcing. But they try and hook you with the subscription model for the demo, as it were, instead of having the freely downloadable demos of games out. But I kind of found that it was nice to have the demos, because you could kind of sample what it is you're interested in, but I guess that's where the subscription model kind of takes place. So like if you sign up for like EA Origin or something, or Steam, or and do some kind of a subscription based system and do like a trial, you can kind of sample some of the stuff. Or if you keep signed on, you can just play the games that are in their service. So I don't know. I think it translated well. It's just I preferred the just being able to just download it and have what I want and not have to pay anything. But I can see where that's not really feasible in today's world compared to back then. I used to remember a lot of a lot of different websites you could download stuff from that are no longer existent anymore. And then even looking at things like just nostalgia in general, it's fun to reminisce and look back on the things. And some of it you can, in hindsight, you can kind of see where things failed and things could have been better. But ultimately, it's innovation has definitely helped a lot of these things. It's definitely been something that, nostalgia, while it's great, can lead to better things in the future. It's just when you come to things with a storyline like TV and film, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to translate. But things like gaming and innovation and technology, it's definitely something that can help spawn new and better options, as it were. So I hope you guys had some kind of a fun kind of reminiscing over some of that. Let me know what kind of games you guys used to play. I left off a ton that I would have played on console. I may cover console nostalgia at another time with a co-host, but I found myself looking through some of this the other day, and I was going, man, I really want to talk about some of these things, because a lot of these games were a lot of fun, and especially when I used to emulate a lot of these things. And maybe that would be something fun to do, is to sit on a live stream and maybe like play some of these games and have commentary and just talk while I'm playing a game. So I don't know, maybe that's something we'll do. But let me know what you guys had fun playing as in the 90s and your earliest experiences with gaming, and just let me know what you guys think in the comments area. So you can get this on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, SoundCloud. You can get this on Geekcast Radio, Altered Geek, and thisweekingeek.net. And you can get a hold of me on Twitter at SCP21. Be sure to use the hashtag What's Geeky to You so that I can find that easily, or you can comment at Altered Geek. So until next time, get altered, get geeky with the Altered Geeks.